Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson, Chapter 37, France. Further, Beelzebub continued to speak thus. After Germany, I had for a short time the place of my existence again there on the continent Europe, among the beings of the community called Italy, and after Italy, among the beings of that community who became for the beings of the community Russia what are called the source for the satisfaction of that vice which long before had become fixed in the abnormal process of the ordinary being existence of terrestrial three-brained beings of recent centuries, and which is called suggestibility. That is, I settled among the beings of the community France. Now, my boy, I wish to inform you about the specific aspects of the psyche of those French three-brained beings, in such a way that you may, at the same time, make clear to yourself how much in general among those three-brained beings of the planet Earth who please you, the normal possibility for the crystallization of all being data in the sense of the capacity to ruminate impartially and personally has already deteriorated, and how at the present time subjective essence opinion about every reality is formed in them at times entirely opposite to that which should be obtained by the perception of that reality, directly received by them personally through impressions. In my opinion, it will be well if we take these same French beings as an example for making clear what I've just told you. The point is that at the present time among beings of all groupings breeding on that continent Europe, on which, as they express it, their cultured existence is now concentrated, as well as on all other continents, there became infallibly crystallized already from the very beginning of their formation into responsible beings, data for their representation about the individuality of these same French beings, which data brings forth in them such a definite understanding that these French, of all beings similar to them of their planet, are, as they express it, the most depraved and immodest. Before this, namely before my choice of the community France as the place of my permanent existence, data was formed in my common presence for just such a representation about them, because going about everywhere and existing among the beings there of all kinds of groupings which exist at the present time on almost all terra firma parts of the surface of your planet, I frequently heard during all conversations such an opinion concerning the French beings. Although earlier, as I've already told you, I had sometimes been in just that community France, I had nevertheless, on my preceding visits, paid no special attention to the particulars of the psyche of those beings and to that opinion which beings of nearly all the other communities there had about them. This time, however, when I settled in one of the provincial towns there, and my presence, of course, instinctively expected to perceive impressions from immoral and depraved manifestations of the local three-brained beings, I, to my great and ever-increasing surprise, ascertained, first of all, that I would not perceive anything of the kind. A little later, when I began to go about among them, and even to make friends with some of them and with their families, the data for this, as it is called, automatic opinion about them not only began to become decrystallized in me, but there began to become crystallized in me the required being data for finding out just what was the cause that data could become crystallized in the common presences of other communities for such an opinion about them which did not correspond to reality. All this interested me more and more each day because, existing among them, it gradually became clear to me that the beings of that community were not only not the most depraved and immoral, but on the contrary, they seemed to be the most patriarchal and modest beings of all the three-brained beings who were grouped on the continent Europe. So I then began specially to observe and to acquire corresponding information in order to elucidate for myself just that contemporary terrestrial question. While I was there in that provincial town, I was unable to elucidate anything for myself, but later, when I happened to go to the capital of those French beings, then there, from the very first day, the basic causes of that misunderstanding also began to be gradually elucidated in my reason. For the elucidation of these causes, the following facts then served there, and also my impartial observations and considerations. When I went this time to that capital named Paris, which, by the way, had now in the logic Nestorian crystallization of the contemporary three-brained beings of your planet, breeding on all the continents, already completely become also such a center of their imagined culture as the city Samlios, Korkalai, Babylon, and so on were for the beings of former periods in their time. I went straight from the railway station to the hotel which had been recommended to me while still in the city of Berlin by an acquaintance of mine. The first thing that I happened to notice was that all the servants of that hotel then consisted of foreigners who mostly spoke the English language, whereas not so long ago, as it seems, all the servants of this same hotel spoke only the Russian language. The day after my arrival in that contemporary Samlios, I inquired for a certain being belonging to a community called Persia, to whom I had an introduction from one of my good friends existing in the capital of that community. This new acquaintance of mine, the Persian being, suggested in the evening of that day that I should go with him to what is called the Boulevard des Capucins and sit for a while in the then famous Grand Café. When we arrived at this Grand Café, we sat down at one of the many tables which took up, as is usual there in Paris, half the pavement. As I've already told you, a café serves the same purpose for the beings on the continent Europe as their chaikanas do for the beings dwelling on the continent Asia. The only difference is this. On the continent Asia, in a chaikana, they give you a certain reddish liquid to drink, squeezed from a certain well-known flower there. While here on the continent Europe, although in these establishments they also give a liquid to drink, yet that liquid is not only, firstly, completely black, but secondly, from what it is squeezed, no one knows except the proprietor of that establishment. We began to drink the black liquid served to us called coffee. I noticed here also that all the staff of this Grand Café, or as they say here, the waiters, were beings from other groupings, mostly from the European community called Italy. You must know that in general in this part of the city Paris, or in this foreign Paris, each business is a specialty of the beings of one or other of the contemporary communities of the continent Europe or other continents.